golden sun sank slowly behind the wide Texas plains, painting the horizon in hues of amber and rose. Dust swirled around the boots of a giant cowboy as he tightened the ropes on his saddle. His name was Luke Tanner, a man known for his strength, his silence, and the sorrow that followed him like a shadow. Years of solitude had hardened his face, and the old ranch where he lived echoed with nothing but the sound of wind and forgotten laughter. He wasn't cruel, just broken. The war had taken his brother, and life had taken his reason to smile. But that evening something unexpected shattered his lonely rhythm. A small voice, light, trembling and innocent, broke through the still air. "Mister, do you know where my mama went?" Luke turned sharply. Standing near the fence was a little girl no older than 6, with a blue denim dress, muddy boots, and eyes that shimmered with both fear and courage. Her tiny hands clutched a torn piece of cloth. Luke's brows furrowed. "Where's your home, kid?" he asked, his deep voice gentle yet rough. She looked up at him, her lip quivering. "The bad men came. They took my mama away. They said she owed them. I ran." Her words hit him harder than any bullet ever could. Luke crouched, trying to catch her gaze. "You're safe now, little one. Nobody's gonna hurt you here." He took her inside his cabin, poured her some milk, and listened to her story by the dim firelight. Her name was Annie. Her mother, Clara, worked at the town's saloon, not by choice but by necessity. When she refused to go with the men who demanded payment she didn't owe, they dragged her away. Annie escaped through the back door and ran for miles until she found Luke's ranch. As the night deepened, Annie began to feel safe for the first time in days. Her laughter, soft and pure, filled Luke's empty cabin. But when she noticed him staring quietly into the flames, she tilted her head and asked in her sweet voice, "Mr. Luke, why are you all alone? Don't you have a wife?" Luke gave a small, hollow chuckle. "No, darling. I reckon the kind of life I live don't suit no woman." She thought for a moment, her little brow furrowing in seriousness. Then she said something that froze him in place. "You need a wife, and I need a dad." The words hung in the air like a spark waiting to light a fire. Luke blinked, not knowing what to say. The innocence in her voice cut through his loneliness deeper than any memory could. For a long moment neither spoke. Only the crackling fire filled the silence. Then Luke looked at her with a faint smile. "You got quite a way with words, Annie." She smiled proudly. "That's what Mama says too." That night, while Annie slept soundly wrapped in his old flannel blanket, Luke sat outside staring at the stars. Something stirred deep inside him, a forgotten warmth. He didn't know where this little girl had come from or why fate had brought her here. But one thing was certain, he wasn't going to let her go hungry, scared or alone ever again. By sunrise, he saddled his horse. Annie rubbed her sleepy eyes and asked, "Where are we going?" He placed his hat gently on her head and said, "To bring your mama home." As they rode out across the endless golden fields, the sun bathed them both in light. The beginning of something neither of them had ever known. Family. The road to the town was long, dusty, and filled with whispers of danger. Luke Tanner was a man who had once walked away from the world, but now he rode toward it with purpose. Annie sat in front of him on the saddle, clutching his arm tightly. "Don't be scared," he whispered. "We'll find her." When they reached the small desert town, Luke's towering figure drew every eye. People stepped aside as he dismounted, the little girl still holding his hand. Inside the saloon, silence fell as he entered. "Where's Clara?" he asked, his voice like distant thunder. The man behind the counter hesitated. "Luke, she's been taken to the Silver Creek camp. They said she owed money." Luke's jaw tightened. He turned to Annie and said softly, "Stay here, little one. I'll bring your mama back." But the girl shook her head fiercely, tears forming in her eyes. "No, I'm not losing her again." Something in her voice reminded Luke of his own childhood. The helplessness, the loss, the longing. He lifted her back onto his horse. "Then we ride together." By dusk, they reached the outlaw camp near Silver Creek. Luke's heart pounded like a drum. He knew this wouldn't be easy. With a revolver in hand and fire in his eyes, he strode into the camp. The men laughed when they saw him, one man against many. But Luke Tanner wasn't just any man. "Let the woman go," he said coldly. The leader sneered, "And who's gonna make us?" Luke's answer came in silence, the roar of a single gunshot that shattered the bottle in the man's hand. The laughter stopped. Within minutes, the outlaws backed away, defeated not by violence alone but by the force of Luke's resolve. Clara ran forward, trembling, tears in her eyes. Annie screamed, "Mama!" and threw herself into her mother's arms. Clara looked at Luke, her voice breaking. "Why would you risk your life for us?" Luke looked at Annie, then back at Clara. "Because she told me I need a wife. And she needs a dad." The air went still, for the first time in years. Luke smiled, not the forced kind, but one that came from deep within. Clara wept softly, realizing that in this giant, Cowboy's heart was a gentleness the world had forgotten. Weeks passed. Luke repaired the old cabin. Clara helped in the kitchen, and Annie filled the ranch with laughter again. The man who once lived in silence now had a reason to speak, to laugh, to hope. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Annie sat between them on the porch and said, "See, I told you, Mr. Luke, you just needed us." Luke chuckled, tipping his hat. "Reckon you were right, darling." And in that moment, under the orange glow of another